It's Monday, July 16. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. The Meteorological Service of Jamaica says despite a tropical wave across the island, rainfall across most areas continues to be hindered by the presence of Saharan dust across central Caribbean. Shower activity is expected to be limited to sections of central and western parishes for the next couple of days. And members of the commission that will spearhead the strategic review of operations at PETROJAM will be named this week. They will have 3 to 4 months to complete the exercise and submit their findings. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness wants the new board of the state-owned oil refinery to make the process for hiring a new manager a highly competitive one. Mr. Holness, who now has responsibility for the energy portfolio, issued the warning during a visit to PETROJAM on Friday. General Manager Floyd Grindley left the post amid allegations of mismanagement, corruption and cronyism at the entity. Mr. Holness said the search for a new general manager is part of a restructuring of the entity. There have been concerns about the hiring practices at PETROJAM, with the qualifications of its human resource manager, Yolande Ramarak, called into question. Motorists traveling to downtown Kingston today via Marcus Garvey Drive and Water Lane are being asked to use East Avenue or Industrial Terrace, as a section of Water Lane will be closed to facilitate drainage improvement works. The National Works Agency says Water Lane will be inaccessible beyond the Port Royal Street intersection. The work should be completed by 8 p.m. The Firearm Licensing Authority, FLA, has amped up measures to trace the purchase and use of legal ammunition across the country. Part of those measures, according to Chief Executive Officer Shane Dalling, is the current analysis of the annual allocation of ammunition to the country's 23 dealerships. Last October, on the heels of a major corruption scandal at the FLA, then National Security Minister Robert Montague said the regulator would be conducting an audit of some 8 million rounds of ammunition which were unaccounted for. Montague said that based on the amount allocated to the island's 42,000 licensed firearm holders per year, approximately 5 million rounds are supplied to the legal trade annually. He said, however, that the authorities could not account for the whereabouts of the remaining 8 million of the 13 million rounds of ammunition which it imports each year. The Bank of Jamaica has named GRACEKENNEDY Payments Limited an agent in its national coin redemption drive, a move it hopes will help bring in the over $100 million in recently demonetized 1, 10 and 25-cent coins that remain uncollected. The arrangement with GKPS takes effect next week, Monday, July 23, and will continue for an initial period of 1 year. The arrangement is expected to make it easier for people who live outside of Kingston to surrender their coins. The central bank explained that the coin redemption arrangement applies to both legal tender coins in circulation, which members of the public wish to exchange, as well as the recently demonetized 1, 10 and 25-cent coins. In regional news, some participants of the 24th Forum of Sao Paulo in Havana, Cuba, which began last week, called for unity of the Caribbean and Latin American region. Here's more in this report from Richard Richards.
Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Raul Gonsalves, paid homage to Cuban national hero José Martí at the monument in the historical Revolution Square in Havana, just minutes after his arrival in Havana and before the welcome ceremony and official conversations with Cuban authorities. After this, Gonsalves was then received in the Revolution Palace by the President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, with whom he sustained an official meeting. Prime Minister Raul Gonsalves is here in Cuba on an official visit and also to take part in the 24th edition of the Forum of Sao Paulo, which is being held here in Havana from this 15th of July until next Tuesday, the 17th. For the head of state of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this venue of the Sao Paulo's Forum constitutes a special scene for defending the sovereignty of Latin America and the Caribbean countries.
and we have to combine together. Sometimes our own people don't see this, and it is important for leaders to help them to understand this and to explain our historical circumstances and the legacies which we have had from the past, which we must repair in the contemporary period, but not to have that legacy further distorted against our own interests. Development.
Ralph Gonsalves also pointed out that this event will sustain the principles of solidarity among countries of the region and will once more confirm positions against any kind of interfering policies.
And we have to work together on a set of common goals for the upliftment of our people in the interest of our people's humanization, and to ensure that the basic principles of state-to-state relations are adhered to: non-interference in the internal affairs of countries, no imperial threats, no question of any intervention, military or otherwise. These are bedrock principles.
Cuban St. Vincent and the Grenadines have enjoyed fruitful, mutual, beneficial relations since the establishment of diplomatic ties in 1992, based on mutual respect, cooperation, and full respect for each nation's national sovereignty and independence. The two nations are members of ALBA. This is the Bolivarians' Alliance for the Peoples of our America. Direct from Cuba, Richards, Canal Caribe.
Haiti's president says he will appoint a new prime minister as soon as possible, following the resignation of the country's second highest official. President Jovenel Moïse said late Saturday in a television broadcast that he will form an inclusive government whose mission will be to alleviate the misery of the Haitian people. Prime Minister Jacques-Guy Lafontaine resigned earlier in the weekend over his handling of a failed plan to raise the prices of gasoline, diesel and kerosene by 38% to 51%. At least 7 people were killed and dozens of businesses were looted during riots after the government announced the price hike. In sports, Jamaica had 3 victories on yesterday's final day of the competition at the Athletics World Cup in London, England, as Sharika Jackson, Shanika Ricketts and Taekwondo Tracy won their respective events. Jamaica, with 153 points, ended 4th overall, as the United States, on 219 points, walked away with the Global Platinum Trophy for topping the overall standing. And that's the news. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.